पहली बात, इसका स्ट्रक्चर याद रखना कि ये पेपर में 60 मार्क्स का ऊपर का कंपनी लॉ का प्रैक्टिस का पार्ट है। ओके, पेपर इसी तरह डिवाइड होगा। यस, 60 मार्क्स का क्वेश्चंस आपको इन्हीं चैप्टर से आएगा एंड 40 मार्क्स का क्वेश्चन जिसमें आप डायरेक्टर्स एजीएम वगैरह पढ़ के बैठे वो इन चैप्टर से आएगा। ओके, तो वो पेपर में डिवीजन होगा ही, डेफिनेटली होगा। 1 2 3, आई थिंक 3 एंड फोर्थ क्वेश्चन ऊपर का आता है, 5 एंड 6 कंपलसरी नीचे वाला 40 मार्क्स का होता है। ओके, सो इस चीज का ध्यान रखना व्हेन यू आर सॉल्विंग द पेपर। देन 17 chapters fully divided and we are going for the first few one. No doubt this is one of the longest to deal with. Okay, so इसके अंदर क्या क्या पढ़ के जाने का है। एक तो इंट्रोडक्शन टू ज्यूरिस्प्रूडेंस ऑफ कंपनी लॉ, ये देख के जाना कि कंपनी लॉ के पीछे क्या रीजन था, व्हाट वाज द आइडिया बिहाइंड ब्रिंगिंग कंपनी लॉ। ओके, रिफॉर्म्स बाय कंपनीज एक्ट, ईज ऑफ डूइंग के लिए क्या क्या रिफॉर्म्स लाए गए, ये आपके वो क्वेश्चन है जो आपके लिए एग्जाम में सरप्राइज करके आते हैं। सर रिफॉर्म्स के बारे में तो हमने कभी सोचा ही नहीं था। ओके, सो इन चीज़ों के बारे में ध्यान रखना। देन कमिंग टू अनदर वन, ओके, that is exception, doctrine of Indo management and exceptions to the doctrine of Indo management concept. ओके, इंडो मैनेजमेंट है क्या और डॉक्ट्रिन ऑफ इंडो मैनेजमेंट क्या कंसेप्ट है, ऑलरेडी आप लोगों ने काफी डिटेल में पढ़ लिया होगा। ओके, येट दिस इज वन अनदर वन। देन हाँ, ई गवर्नेंस एंड एमसीए 21 का कंसेप्ट क्या है, व्हाट इज द ई गवर्नेंस, व्हाट इज द फॉर्म्स टू बी इम्प्लीमेंटेड और क्या क्या चीजें, वो एक बार पढ़ के जाना। ओके, देन ऑल अबाउट फाइलिंग्स एंड ई फॉर्म्स, ये एक बार रीड करके जाना अच्छे से। अगेन ये सारी चीज़ें रीड ही करनी है, रीड करके जाना व्हाट अबाउट ऑल अबाउट फाइलिंग्स एंड ई फॉर्म्स के बेसिक रिक्वायरमेंट्स क्या है। ओके, एंड यस, इस चैप्टर का ग्लॉसरी एक बार पढ़ के जाना, इस चैप्टर का ग्लॉसरी एक बार पढ़ के जाना। ओके, क्लियर। सो दीज आर सर्टन रिक्वायरमेंट्स फॉर लेसन नंबर 1। ठीक है, देन कम्स टू लेसन नंबर 2, लीगल स्टेटस, लेसन नंबर 2। ओके, सो लेसन नंबर 2 में क्या क्या चीज़ें देखनी है। वेल हियर यू कैन गो विद corporate personalities. What is a corporate personality, what has to be understood, okay, and also go with company as a artificial person, company as a artificial person, okay, company as a artificial person, ठीक है। then capacity to sue and be sued, ये concept भी discuss कर लेगा, capacity to sue and be sued, the company can sue and be sued वाला capacity, okay. Limited liability concept and exception to the principle of limited liability, limited liability, exceptions to the principle of limited liability, okay, clear। अरे ये तो पूछा ही नहीं, अरे अपने अपनी मॉड्यूल लेके बैठ जाना ऑनलाइन में, मैं तो बोलना ही भूल गया। ओके, फाइन। देन private company and characteristics of private company with the privileges of private company, private company, characteristics of private company and privileges of private company, okay. Then small company, the concept of small company, हाँ जो नया अमेंडेड डेफिनेशन है वो है, क्योंकि उसमें अमेंडमेंट था इसलिए मैंने उसको मार्क करवाया था। तो स्मॉल कंपनी, क्लियर। गवर्नमेंट कंपनी, गवर्नमेंट कंपनी, ठीक है, ये थोड़ा अनएक्सपेक्टेड एरिया रहता है, गवर्नमेंट कंपनी पूछते हैं कि नहीं, लेकिन ध्यान से पढ़ के जाना। ओके, देन एमओए एओए का चैप्टर, इसमें द कंटेंट्स ऑफ मेमोरेंडम, द कंटेंट्स ऑफ मेमोरेंडम, ओके, एंड ऑल्टरेशन टू एमओए, ऑल्टरेशन टू एमओए. ठीक है. What are the various kinds of alterations that can be done to MOA? Clear? जिसमें ये वाला पढ़ के जाना, alteration in MOA with change in the local limits, change outside the limits, change within the state of one registrar to other, and change from one state to another. Okay? Registered office change का clause होता है, वो पढ़ के जाना. Done? Registered office change का पूरा पार्ट. ओके. फिर ऑल्टरेशन टू कैपिटल क्लॉज पढ़ के जाना एंड प्रोसीजर फॉर ऑल्टरिंग एमओए फॉर कैपिटल क्लॉज. ऑल्टरेशन ऑफ कैपिटल क्लॉज और व्हाट इज द प्रोसीजर फॉर ऑल्टरिंग दैट. ओके, वो वाला पार्ट भी देख के जाना. डन. ओके. देन हाँ, एंट्रेंचमेंट प्रोविजंस क्या होता है. एंट्रेंचमेंट प्रोविजंस क्या होता है. व्हाट इज एंट्रेंचमेंट प्रोविजन. जिसमें वेरी रिस्ट्रिक्टेड प्रोविजन डालते हैं, आर्टिकल्स को और स्ट्रिक्ट करते हैं. दीज काइंड ऑफ प्रोविजंस आर कॉल्ड एंट्रेंचमेंट प्रोविजंस. ओके. प्रोसीजर टू ऑल्टर एओए. प्रोसीजर टू ऑल्टर एओए. प्रोसीजर टू ऑल्टर एओए, ये भी पढ़ के जाना. हो गया. Okay, fine. Then pre-incorporation contracts. Pre-incorporation contracts. Okay, pre-incorporation contracts. Done? Okay, fine. Now coming to the chapters of shares and share capital. Okay, so do this. Compliance for publication of shares, terms in relation to allotments, and definition of SAGAR. Okay, compliance for publication of share capital, basic terms relating to allotments, and meaning of securities. Okay, done. Legal effect of share certificates. Legal effect of share certificates. Okay. Done. Then concept of allotment of securities. Concept of allotment of securities. Okay. Procedure and issue of redemption of preference shares. Procedures and procedure to issue and redemption of preference shares. Okay. Employee stock option scheme. Employee stock option scheme. Done. Bonus shares. Bonus shares. Done. Reduction of share capital. Conditions for reduction. Diminution is not reduction. Reduction of share capital. conditions for reduction. Diminution is not reduction. Okay, done. Rectification of register of members. Rectification of register of members. Rectification of register of members. Transfer in violation of articles. Transfer in violation of articles. June 2026 के लिए important है, पढ़ के जाना. Transfer in violation of articles. Okay. Then. Okay. Then legal framework for depository participants. Legal framework for depository participants. Legal framework for depository participants. Okay, clear? Fine. And specimen resolutions. Specimen resolutions. Specimen resolutions. Okay. Then cessation of memberships. Cessation of memberships. Cessation of memberships. Okay. Index of members. Index of members. Index of members. Okay. Clear? Closing of register of members. Closing of register of members. Closing of register of members. ठीक है? Okay. Significant beneficial owners in company. Significant beneficial owners in company. Significant beneficial owners in company. Okay. Then rectification of register of members and register of significant owners दोनों रखना. Register of significant owners and register rectification of register of members. Okay. Okay. Shareholders democracy. Shareholders democracy. Shareholders democracy. And few business which are required to be transacted by shareholders. Few business which are required to be transacted by shareholders. Difference between veto power and casting vote. Difference between veto power and casting votes. Okay. Specimen resolution and formats. Specimen resolutions and formats. Okay. Lesson 6, debt instruments. Borrowing powers of company and debt capital. Borrowing powers of company and debt capital. Okay. Next, kinds of debentures. Kinds of debentures. kinds of debentures. Okay. Eligible company for deposits. Eligible companies for deposits. Okay, what do you mean by eligible company for deposits? Okay, acceptance limits for deposits. Acceptance limits for deposits. Trustee for depositors. Trustees for depositors and duties of trustees for depositors. Trustees for depositors and duties of trustees for depositors. General provision regarding premature repayment of deposits. General provisions regarding premature repayments of deposits. Okay, chapter of charges. In that, definition and meaning of charge. Definition and meaning of charge. Okay, crystallization of floating charge. Crystallization of floating charge. Okay, consequences of non-registration of charges. Consequences of non-registration of charges. Satisfaction of charges. Satisfaction of charges. Okay, and procedure for satisfaction of charge. And procedure for satisfaction of charge. Okay, rectification of charge by central government in register of charges. Rectification of charge by central government in register of charges. Okay. Okay. Now, dividend, distribution of profits. Okay. Interest versus dividend. Interest versus dividend. Okay. Dividend distribution policy. Dividend distribution policy. Okay. Dividend on preference shares. Dividend on preference shares. Okay. And dividend on equity with differential rights. Dividend on equity with differential rights. Okay. Declaration of dividend to be unconditional. Declaration of dividend to be unconditional. Okay. Liability to pay final dividend. Liability to pay final dividend. Unpaid dividend account. Unpaid dividend account. The Investor Education Protection Fund, IEPF. Okay, done. Okay, good. Accounts and auditors के chapters में, okay, that is important definitions, including books of accounts भी है. Books of accounts are important. Clear? Place of keeping books of accounts, maintenance of books of accounts. Place of keeping books of accounts, maintenance of books of accounts. Financial statements. And financial statement must give true and fair view. Financial statements. Financial statement must give true and fair view. Okay. Reopening of accounts on courts and tribunal orders. Reopening accounts on courts and tribunals orders. Okay. NFRA, short note पूरा. What is NFRA? Okay. जिसमें उसका objectives भी आ जाएगा, constitution भी आ जाएगा. NFRA. Okay. Indian accounting standards की requirements. Ind AS. Then mandatory rotation of auditors. Mandatory rotation of auditors. Okay. Power of tribunal. Power of tribunal. Power of tribunal. Disqualification of auditor. Disqualification of auditor. Okay. Secretarial audit and scope of secretarial audits. Secretarial audits and scope of secretarial audits. Done? Yeah. 10th chapter, compromise arrangement wala. Notice to provide for voting through proxy and ballot. Notice of meeting, notice to provide voting for proxy and ballot. Okay. And approval and sanction of a scheme. Approval and sanction of a scheme. Okay. The power of tribunal to enforce compromise and arrangement. The power of tribunal to enforce compromise and arrangement. Okay. Merger amalgamation of certain companies. Merger amalgamation of certain companies. Application by central government to tribunals. Application by central government to tribunals. Okay. Power to acquire shares of dissenting shareholders. Power to acquire shares of dissenting shareholders. Okay. Including ये offer to dissenting shareholders and meaning of dissenting. ये भी कर लो. Same ही चीज़ है. Offer to dissenting shareholders, meeting of dissenting shareholders. Okay. Purchase of minority shareholding. Purchase of minority shareholding. Okay. Companies to furnish information and statistics. Company to furnish information and statistics. Okay. 11th chapter. Dormant company. Okay. Procedure to obtain dormant status and specimen resolutions. Procedure to obtain dormant and specimen, बस इतना ही है. General meetings. Business to be transacted at AGMs. Business to be transacted at AGMs. Procedure for holding adjourned meeting. Procedures for holding adjourned meeting. Resolution requiring special notice and process of passing resolutions. A resolution requiring special notice and process of passing. Okay. The contents of the notice and place of meeting of notice. Okay. Agenda of the meeting. Agenda of the meeting. Persons entitled to receive notices. Okay, and notice as per SS2. Person entitled to receive notices and notice as per SS2. Okay. Process of conducting meeting. Process of conducting meeting. Okay. Voting and e-voting procedures. Voting and e-voting procedures. Circulation of members resolution. Circulation of members resolution. Preservation of minutes in scheme of mergers amalgamation. Preservation of minutes in scheme of merger amalgamation. Report on AGMs. Report on AGMs. Duties of CS. Duties of CS. सब चैप्टर में? हाँ उधर तो है वो इम्पोर्टेंट, यहाँ पे दिया हुआ है, इन्होंने इम्पोर्टेंट मार्क करवाया तो मैं भी करवा रहा हूँ. Okay, now comes 13th chapter, directors. Okay, fine. Impact of non-compliance of DR3, KYC and web. Okay, अपने जितने भी नोट्स है वो सब अच्छे से देख के जाना, एंड इसको सिर्फ रीडिंग के तौर पे एक एक्स्ट्रा रखना. कभी कभी आपको आपके जो प्रेजेंट नोट्स है उस पर कॉम्प्रोमाइज नहीं करने का है, वो देखने का है, रीड करने का है. ओके, क्लियर? देन term of independent director and payment of sitting fees and commissions. Term of independent director and payment of sitting fees and commissions. Okay, appointment and removal of directors. Appointment and removal of directors. Okay, appointment of nominee director. Appointment of small directors, small shareholders director. Appointment of nominee directors, appointment of SSD, small shareholders director. Appointment of independent directors. Selection of independent director and disqualification of appointment of directors. Selection of independent director and disqualification of appointment. Removal of directors by tribunals. Removal of directors by tribunals. Loans to directors. Okay. Members' right to inspect. Members' right to inspect specimen resolutions. Members' right to inspect and specimen. Done? Next chapter, that is board composition and power of the boards. Okay. Board composition of a listed company. Board composition of a listed company. Functions of a board committee and powers of board committee. Disclosures in board reports. Disclosures in board reports. Okay. Risk management committee and powers of risk management committee. RMC, risk management committee and powers of risk management. Okay. Applicability of CSR committee and functions of CSR committee. Applicability of CSR committee and functions of CSR committee. Prohibition restriction regarding political contribution. Prohibition restriction regarding political contribution. Intercorporate loans, investment guarantees and securities. Intercorporate loans, investment guarantees and securities. Certain prior approval of financial institutions. Prior approval of financial institutions. Penalties for non-compliances. Penalties for non-compliances. Okay. Meeting of board and its committees का chapter. Board meeting through video conferencing. Board meeting through video conferencing. Okay. Preparation of notice for meeting of the board and committees of the board. Preparation of notice for the board and committees of the board. Agenda management. Agenda management. Okay. Quorum of meetings. Quorum of board meetings. Chairman of the board meetings. Chairman of the board meetings. Resolution by circulations and passing of resolution by circulation. Resolution by circulations and passing of resolution by circulation. Meeting of independent directors. Meeting of independent directors. Need and scope of secretarial standards. Need and scope of secretarial standards. Then? Okay. Now we are on chapter 16, annual reports. Okay. Disclosures by the board. Introduction and disclosures by the board, including annual report. So, you know. Okay. Secretarial standards on report of board of directors. Secretarial standards on reports of board of directors. Composition of audit committees. Okay. And details of visual mechanisms. Signing of board reports, annual returns, signing of annual returns. Okay. Meeting of CSR committees and CSR policies. Meeting of CSR committees, CSR policies. Social stock exchange. Specimen resolution formats. Done? Chapter 17, KMPs. Okay. No person shall act as a chairman, MD, and CFO at the same time. No person should act as a MD, CFO at the same time. Manner of appointment of KMPs. Okay. Provision of LODR and vacancy of KMP. Provision of LODR and vacancy of KMP. Okay. Next, appointment of MD and manager same time not possible. Appointment of MD or manager same time is not possible. Okay. Issue of general notice making application to central government. Issue of general notice making application to that. Okay. Duties, power and responsibility of MDs. Duties, powers and responsibility of MDs. Okay. Human resource management. Human resource management. Company secretary as KMP. Company secretary is as KMP. Removal of company secretary and procedure of resignations. Removal of company secretary and procedure of resignation. Disclosures by listed companies. Disclosures by listed companies. Okay. Fine. So with this, it's done.